So with Commander Intrinsics incoming, what D has told us is a feature that's going to be coming with it is the ability to put a certain weapon on an allied crewman's hands. So let's have a look at which kind of weapons would work based entirely off the AI systems that currently exist. Here we are in the simulacrum with Equinox Prime. So we're going to be using Duality as our testing dummy to see what certain weapons do. First one, we're going to look at our bows. Originally, I thought that bows would fire really slowly from our allies, and sometimes they do. In this case, they do. But sometimes they don't. And I'm not entirely sure what the logic is here. Seems like maybe there's a bit of a range going on. The target acquisition might be a bit much, but once they acquire their target, they do fire pretty damn quickly. So I think bows are a viable option if you so desire. But if you don't want to use one of the normal bows on your allied crewmen, you could potentially use something a little bit more interesting. For example, the Proboscis Sonos. So, same idea. As long as they acquire a target, they will fire very, very quickly. The Proboscis Sonos, of course, able to grab enemies together. That is, of course, going to make it very, very strong. Don't worry about the damage calculation for the time being. Keep in mind that Duality does have extra damage, so we're not going to worry about that. But generally speaking, the overall experience of using that weapon is very, very good. Alternatives also include something like the Kuva Brahma. So, with the Kuva Brahma, though, you'll find that range is going to be a bit of an issue if we find ourselves fighting too far, because the drop of the Kuva Brahma does have quite a significant drop, which does mean that your allied crewmen might struggle. What you want to do is maybe have your allied crewmen engage in close quarters combat, as I'm trying to say, because then, of course, they will constantly be firing anyway, so that's really, really strong. And then, of course, you can see a lot of effectiveness coming out of that Kuva Brahma, because your ally should, in theory, have infinite ammo as well, which is going to be really, really good. Speaking of infinite ammo, let's have a look at something like heavy weapons. I have absolutely no idea if something like the Mosselen will be available for your allied crewmate. It might, or maybe it won't. I don't know. Hard to say. But if you use something like a Mosselen on an allied crewmate, that will be really, really good, because a Mosselen actually demonstrates the power of using something like a fast-firing weapon when it's not hitting a wall, because allied crewmates and AI in general are very, very powerful at using something like a fast-firing weapon, because they tend to get really Rambo really bloody quickly. So that is probably a really, really good option if you want to do that. Alternatives also include the Super Vandal and the Soma Prime, so if you want to have a check out of that, feel free to do so. But you're basically going to see something like this. What you're not going to see, though, is the use of secondary functions. As we saw there was no real use of the final charge-up explosion AoE attack that the Mosselen has. That's really, really powerful, because the AIs, for whatever reason, at the present moment, aren't really equipped to do that. So another example of this would be to use something like the Corinth Prime. The Corinth Prime, of course, having a secondary function to drop a grenade, that will never happen, as far as I can tell. Even if they are closer, they're not going to use the secondary function of the grenade. And this is the same with any weapon that has a secondary function, whether it be something like the Inferno Prime with its shotgun mode, whether it be insert other weapon that has a secondary mode that I can't think of at the present moment. But either way, you get the idea. Shotguns, though, on the other hand, seem to be very, very powerful options. They seem to have a really, really good accuracy with shotguns for some reason, even shotguns that tend to have a bit more of a spread. The AI ally seems to be really, really powerful with that. So alternatives include the Corinth Prime, Tigress Prime. That could be a really good option as well if you so desire. Now, another type of weapon that we can look at would be a beam weapon. So beam weapons such as the Gamma Core, or the Synoid Gamma Core, or the Light of 1,000 Stars, they do seem to have a bit of a range. So once the AI crewman actually overcomes that range, they start to become really, really strong. So for example, if we have them over here, well, then it's basically 100% accuracy all the damn time. And you're going to see potentially some really, really good value from putting something like a beam weapon on an AI crewman, especially since you know exactly what they're shooting at and where they're shooting, so that's going to be really, really strong. Now, the big question for me is melee weapons. Can we actually put melee weapons on an AI crewman? Because it would be interesting to put, say, a melee weapon on one crewman and then have a gun on the other. So if we're using something like the Grand Prime or the Gatekeeper's Truth on something like an AI Spectre, or a Duality Spectre in this case, As you can see, they will actually use the melee weapon, but it seems like they're kind of a bit all over the place when it comes to using melee weapons. They kind of swing once or twice maybe, and then they kind of just stop. And this is all the same if you try to use something like a gunblade as well. A gunblade like the Stroffer, which I will be making a video on eventually, probably soon, because I do have a proper build this time. The thing about the Stroffer, and I'm going to say all gunblades, is that even though they are gunblades with some level of range, unfortunately the AI will actually run up to them in melee range, like real close melee range, before they actually start to attack. So that's the idea with the Stroffer, and by extension, Redeemer, Prime, and similar weapons like that. Seems like they will try to attack more than once though with the Stroffer, so that's really, really good. And that's pretty much it. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. What kind of weapon would you like to use for your AI crewmen? Let me know in the comments. If you want to test any weapon in particular, feel free to use Equinox and a Duality Spectre, because I think that's probably the best way to do it. That way you can actually just freely swap between different weapons, like I freely swap in this video. If you try to use regular Spectres, you're going to have to set each one up. So, otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more WarFrame content, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye!